Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this live stream event. My name is Alexia, and I am the project and event manager of the Microsoft Reactor Toronto. I will be sharing with you session resources in the chat. Before we begin, I'd like to quickly review two items with you, our code of conduct and event guidelines. First, please take a moment to review our code of conduct. Microsoft Reactor seeks to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we encourage engagement in the chat, please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. Secondly, our event guidelines. This session is being recorded and will be available on demand through the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel in about 24 to 48 hours. And if you've not been on a live stream through YouTube before, please note that you must create an account on YouTube in order to access and interact in the chat. If you can set that up now, if you're unable to use the chat but have questions, feel free to reach out to us on social media or on Meetup. Which brings us to today's session. I'm going to bring in our speakers. Hello. Max and Dave, we're back. How are you?
Hello.
Good. How are you?
Fantastic. Super excited for this episode this week. I know it says episode 4. We'll talk a little bit later about how we reschedule episode 1, but this is Adopting GitHub in the Enterprise World, episode 4 of this series. Very exciting. Take it away.
Good. Thanks. Hey, everybody.
All right. Hi. Can you see? Okay, there you are. Hi, everybody. This is the episode 3 of the Enterprise DevOps series. And today we're going to be talking about the adoption of GitHub in the enterprise world. Just like before, if you have any questions, if there's anything you would like to ask, please use the comments and we'll do our best to answer it right away. If we cannot answer it right away, we can answer it at the end. If we cannot answer it right at the end, we will take it offline. But we'll do our best to answer as many questions as you might have. And the more questions you have, the more interactive this session is, and the more fun it is for everybody. So please ask away. Dave, do you have anything to add?
No, let's introduce ourselves and get started. We only got an hour.
Right. All right.
We better move.
Exactly. So yeah, my name is Max Yermahanov. I'm a senior consultant at ObjectSharp. I'm Azure DevOps MVP, GitHub partner, and so on and so forth. My emails are on the slide, and you can look me up on the internet if you want. I have a blog, Twitter, so on and so forth.
And I'm Dave Lloyd. I'm also a consultant at ObjectSharp, and I'm also a Microsoft MVP. Max and I spend a lot of our time helping customers with DevOps, working with Azure DevOps and GitHub primarily. Yeah, look us up.
Yep. If you have any questions about the Azure DevOps or GitHub or Enterprise DevOps, please feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to help. All right, let's jump in. It's not a secret that the GitHub is huge. It's very popular. It's very well liked and very well received. It's the largest DevOps platform on earth. It has, what is it, 70 plus million? It's 65, I think, is out of date. I think 73 now or something in there. Developers, millions of public and private repos, thousands open source communities. Again, a lot of companies are using it. You can see all of that in on the slide. And there's a reason for it, right? There's a reason why it's so popular. There's a reason why so many companies are using it, right?
I love the quote. I love the on Earth. That's fantastic.
Well,
maybe in the universe, we don't know.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Today we're going to talk about some of the reasons why GitHub is so popular and why it's so popular in the enterprise world as well.
Yeah, so a lot of people think of GitHub as, you know, this open source tool, right? Like it's where developers go to set up their little projects that they work on that maybe turn into an open source project. And and there's a lot of companies out there who still aren't completely sure if they should move to GitHub if it can handle their enterprise. So that's what we're going to talk about. Let's talk about the things that make it enterprise worthy.
Yeah, and again,
So
it is definitely, again, all those things that Dave said, right? But it's so much more, right?
absolutely.
And those are the things we're going to talk. All right,
So let's talk a little bit about the hierarchy of an enterprise. What do you think? So
yeah.
I mean, it's super simple slide, but just so that people kind of understand that when you go to github.com and you sign in with your personal ID, and you can see the world, right? You can see all the public repos that are out there. You can, and companies don't want their 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 IP to be sitting in a public repo somewhere. They want a little bit of protection, and they want a little bit more security. So, we'll talk about that. So, in the enterprise, GitHub Enterprise is still it's a cloud offering. You can have a GitHub, your own GitHub server, but you can have a GitHub Enterprise account, and then underneath that, you can create multiple organizations. Within each organization, you can have multiple repos and multiple teams to access those repos, and it just brings it all together into a nice, neat bucket that will help you secure your source code.
Yeah, it will help you group your code, I guess. It will go to group your content. It will also, having all of this under one enterprise account, it allows you to apply different policies at the account level, at the org level. For example, you can say, you know what, public repos are not going to be hosted in this account. So we're going to have a separate account just for public presence on GitHub, right? And that's what you probably should do if you, again, if you're separating the private and the public, if you don't want any kind of collisions. So you can apply different policies, you can apply them at the org level, repo level, and so on and so forth. You can also set up authentication, set it up at the account level. So for example, you can, and we'll come back to that, right? But you can set up the SAML authentication, or you can just establish yourself a separate dedicated instance under enterprise managed users, which will mean that it is not only it's separate, but it's also using the, there's no direct GitHub handles that you have to handle, right? It's all tied to Active Directory, and all the authentication is done through your identity provider, which could be Active Directory, could be any other LDAP provider of your choosing.
Let's leave that. We got a slide on that, Max.
All right.
Yeah, we'll come up. We'll talk more about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So GitHub allows you to focus, again, the main goal of the GitHub is to allow you to focus on providing developer experience that enables them to do their work, the best work, right? So basically, let developers focus on what they do best, write code, right? Take care of everything else for them, right? So GitHub is a fully integrated platform that allows you to take, again, from idea to production, right? And everything in between.
So
go ahead.
I was just going to say, so even though we're talking about the enterprise, and a lot of tools that are built for enterprise don't really, they're kind of built enterprise first. So they're all about policy and governance and security and making sure, and they don't, they're not always very user friendly. But one thing you've got to realize is that GitHub's first and foremost path forward is always for the developer, right? It's the developer experience that matters to them. And then adding in the ability to have better security and better enterprise functionality. And it's not, I'm not saying it's second rate or it's second place, but it never foreshadows the developer experience. The developer experience is number one most important thing.
Yeah, it's developer centric first. It's business centric second, right?
Yeah.
It encourages collaboration. It encourages the developer collaboration, makes the collaboration easier. There's automations everywhere. You can automate almost every aspect inside the GitHub. We'll talk more about it. It has a seamless integration to the open source because, again, that's what the GitHub most famous for. And has also integration into inner sourcing. We'll talk about this a little bit more in one of the later slides, I hope. And it focuses very much on the security and compliance. The advanced security helps makes the shift left approach for security for DevSecOps extremely easy and extremely smooth for developers, right? Which makes this a very compelling product.
Yep.
All right. What do we have next? It's GitHub. It's a secure, extensible, managed DevOps platform, right? So the uptime, 99.9, easily, right? It rarely, if ever, goes down. There's, again, I think it went down for, again, a little, well, like everything else, there's some glitches, but it's very, very minimal, right? In my, I only seen like one or two. That was worth noting. It's flexible to leverage the right tool, right? So you can integrate the integration points. There's a lot of integration points with various tools, right? So you can hook up, if you can store your source code in Git, in GitHub repos. You can connect it to Azure boards if you want that. If that's where you want to manage your work, you can connect it to Jira if that's what you want to use. Again, there's a lot of seamless integration points. We'll talk about open source in a minute. There's thousands of integration points.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's highly available.
The key. Well, I'm just going to say the key point here is that GitHub, even though it's GitHub Enterprise, you still have that seamless access to leverage open source and to integrate with other tools. It's none of that is closed off just because you're in an enterprise product.
Exactly. Yeah. It has a very low total cost of ownership. It has a very high, excellent return on investment because, again, it has a lot of things to offer. It does a lot of things for you, right? That otherwise you'll have to buy separate products for. The one thing that's not mentioned here, but I do want to mention right away, it's the fact that GitHub is loved and used and popular and well known amongst the developers. It's a big deal, right? Because you want the developers to be happy. GitHub nowadays, it's for developers. It's almost always it's a de facto resume, right? When you go, but again, on the interviews, the first thing that people ask now is, okay, give me your GitHub handle, so we can see what other side projects you're doing, right? So what are you interested in, right? So the fact that, again, the popularity and the what's the word?
Mainstream use.
Mainstream use of GitHub is again, it's important, right?
It is. It's just people coming. The people that you want to hire know GitHub. They know Git.
Yes.
They know. It's just a part of their world. To a lot of it sometimes makes me chuckle. To a lot of young developers, like that's why would you use anything else? What else is there? Because that's just what they've been introduced to and taught on. So let me chat a minute about enterprise managed users. So this is a pretty new offering from GitHub and EMU, enterprise managed users. And the idea here is, I'll kind of set the stage. Like right now, if you could have your enterprise and organizations, but everybody that logs in still needs to connect with their personal GitHub ID that they've set up, right? So somebody would create it up, and even though when you can set up an org that is connected to your Azure Active Directory, for example, and with SAML, and you can and when you try to go to that org, it will ask you to authenticate that way. But it's a little complicated and goofy because it's still your personal ID that you're using, even though now to get into this org, you're authenticating through Azure Active Directory. This enterprise managed users makes it seamlessly excellent. So what you do is just set up your enterprise and get a hold of GitHub and tell them that you want your organization or your enterprise, to be to have enterprise managed users enabled on it. And what will happen is when someone connects, they don't need their personal ID. I can set this up to automatically be provisioned from Azure Active Directory. I can create a team in GitHub and a group in Azure Active Directory. and I can link the two. So if I add somebody into AAD, they automatically sync through to the GitHub team. And when they go to sign into this enterprise, it will ask them for their company ID, and they'll put it in, and they'll get authenticated and added, and then single sign-on will just work, and away they go. It's interesting though, because what it does is when you set up your EMU, they'll ask you for a prefix. So it could be like underscore my company, and everybody. So I would be Dave Lloyd underscore my company would be my personal. It would be the equivalent of my personal GitHub account. And as you know, you can't have underscores in that name, so we know nobody else has it, and yours is reserved for your enterprise managed user enterprise. So when people log in, that's who they become, and no need for all the extra personal stuff. EMU does have a couple of well, I guess it depends on how you look at it, whether they're drawbacks or not. But you can't have public repos in an EMU-enabled enterprise, which I think is a good thing. If you want to have public repos, then set yourself up another enterprise that has a public org in it for your OSS stuff or things you want to share. But this way, your stuff is perfectly safe inside this this inside this enterprise that has EMU enabled on it. A couple of things that you can't do that I think are coming, Max. I haven't really heard, but like gists aren't. You can't do gists in a EMU enabled enterprise. A couple other little things, but I think they're working on that to get that in. Like I said, it's pretty new. It's only been around for a little while.
Yeah, there's a typo, by the way, in the second to last bullet points. It's private and internal repos only.
That's right. Yeah, I think maybe they were probably thinking non-public.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, GitHub evolves. The innovation that been introduced to GitHub, the pace of it, right? It's incredible, right? So it's continuously changing all the time. They always add new things.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the fun part, the access control, right? So GitHub allows you to configure very granular permissions. You can use the built-in roles, which is read, triage, write, maintain, and admin, which are very, very well documented. You can see exactly what each of those roles does. And you can assign the users or the teams to those roles. And if for some reason you need to tweak that role, one of those built-in roles a little bit, you can create your own custom roles. And you can say, for example, people again, you can take one of the existing roles, copy it, and say, this is my, I don't know, my custom write, for example, and everybody will have to use that one, right? So it gives you flexibility.
You might want somebody kind of in between maintain and admin, who's almost an admin, but not quite. But there's also other really cool things that you can do in the orgs and in the enterprise. Like Max said earlier, you can set policies at either level, at all three levels, right? Enterprise, org, or on the repo, and they kind of flow down. So if you do it at the enterprise, all the orgs have that same policy, or you can leave it open on the enterprise, and then so you can create these an extra group and say, well, I want them to almost have what an admin can do, but not quite everything. Maybe I don't want them to be able to delete repos, but they can change the settings on a repo. And you can do that at org level too. You can just say, hey, nobody but an owner can delete a repo, regardless of what your rights are.
Yeah.
So you get lots of different granular possibilities.
The one thing that we didn't mention at the last slide, it's the group provisioning, the user provisioning. So when you configure your authentication, you can set up the user provisioning or group provisioning so that you can link your Active Directory group, for example, to your GitHub team. And as soon as you add when you add the user to the Active Directory group, that user gets automatically synced into a GitHub team. So you don't have to, so you basically manage your user memberships inside Active Directory, and you assign, which are linked to the GitHub teams, and then you assign permissions to the GitHub team, right? So that way it's one place, and you can keep reusing the same groups if you need to.
I did say that. I did say that on the last slide.
You did?
Well, maybe not as clear.
I need to listen to the things you say then.
Maybe not as clear.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's keep on going.
Yeah, let's keep going. We got a lot of stuff.
And again, if you have any questions, please ask. All right.
Yep.
So project management. Did I skip the slide? Yes. No, I didn't.
No,
Okay.
no.
All right. So project management. The amount of GitHub used to have very developer-centric project management or the work management tools, right? The GitHub issues and discussions were very, again, they were good. They were very specific. They were, let's just say, not what's the word? Mature. I don't want to say not mature because that's incorrect.
Well, they don't work great for a team. I mean, they're fine for an open source project, right? It's like, hey, I got an issue with this. How do I do this? What do I do here? Can we add this feature? You know, it's sort of a one-way communication between the developer and the user of that software or package or whatever it was they had. But you know, there needs to be a little bit more, right? You need it to be you know, it'd be nice to have a Kanban board, you know, kind of like the stuff that we showed in the Azure DevOps stuff 2 weeks ago or last week, was it?
Last week,
yeah, and having the ability to show boards and have states that it goes through and you know, a little nicer UI. And it's a work in progress, but it's looking good.
Yeah, it's now has almost all of it. So the new GitHub projects beta and the new GitHub issues beta, which is public beta, by the way, excellent. It's a again, what's the word? I want to say it's a groundbreaking way of thinking about the work management, right? It's you can start very simple. You can grow and customize it as you see fit. It's very efficient and very effective, and it grows at an amazing pace. The amount of new features that have been introduced on a daily, weekly basis is amazing when it comes to GitHub issues. So if you haven't tried it, please take a look. It's really good. It's getting even better, and I think it's going to be awesome. And I think it's going to be the next big thing for the DevOps enterprise.
Look up how to turn it on in your org so that you can use it. Try it out. Worth a look for sure.
Definitely do. It's very Excel-like. It's very cool. Like it. Very simple, very powerful. Yep. All right, let's go. So collaborate. If you do not want to use GitHub issues beta, or you want to use your own tool for the planning, like Jira, Azure Boards, you can integrate it. It's a few clicks to integrate any of those, right? And you can plan your work in Azure Boards and store your code in GitHub, use the GitHub Actions for the deployments, for the pipelines, or use Azure pipelines, or use anything else, right? Very easy to integrate. Similar, very easy to integrate with Slack and Microsoft Teams. There's a lot of really cool, powerful stuff that you can do, right? Especially given that how rich the extensibility, the GitHub extensibility is, right? Again, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened, but
lots of tools that we'll go to the. Sorry, no, different slide. I was thinking of a different slide. I think we bumped it.
Yeah. Let's keep it going. So again, there's a lot of integrations. Another thing that's worth mentioning is the GitHub CLI. It's an amazing tool. It's amazing CLI that allows you to do practically anything that you can do in the UI. You can do in the command line. So if you don't want to use the command, leave the UI. You don't have to. If you want to, again, automate some of the things, you can do that using REST API. You can do that using the GitHub CLI. You can also do it using GraphQL. There's a lot of different options to automate it. But the fact that you can do all of that in the command line, it's very appealing, especially to people that, again, don't like the mouse.
Well, for scripting and for automation, it just makes it so easy to,
I know, but again, yes, but again, for developers, right? It's people that are pretty used to the command line and they don't want to go to open up the browser to do things. They don't have to.
Sure. Yep. True.
All right. Let's talk about the the fun part, the automation beyond CI/CD. And so the GitHub Actions is the tool in GitHub that allows you to automate the functionality inside the GitHub or create the automated workflows. And GitHub Actions are not just about CI/CD, right? So the GitHub Actions, you can definitely do CI/CD things, but you can also use GitHub Actions to
switch slides, Max. Go to the slide you're talking about.
There you
There
are.
you go.
Thank you. You can also use the GitHub Actions to automate pretty much any piece of GitHub, or you can hook any piece of GitHub to your GitHub Actions. So, for example, you have an issue, GitHub issue, right, where you are working on a feature, and then when somebody assigns the label to that issue that says deploy to staging, GitHub Actions can get triggered automatically. It will check if that code is allowed to be deployed to staging, if the person is allowed to deploy to staging, right? And then go ahead and deploy to staging and turn that feature on in staging, right? All of that is because, again, done. You trigger all of that. You can trigger all that from practically anywhere in GitHub, right? There's a lot of what's the word? Endpoints.
Hooks.
There you go. Hooks. Yeah. That's the one. Yeah. It says any operating system, it works on the cloud, it works on premise. And by the way, you can store, like Dave said before, you can have your own GitHub server on premise. You can use the GitHub Enterprise Cloud version that will be hosted in the isolated private instance of the of GitHub. But your deployments can be on premise, right? You can run runners in GitHub runners on premise and do whatever that is you need to do on premise. But again, use the PaaS or the SaaS offering of GitHub. All right. Anything else you want to add, Dave?
Well, I'd flip to the next one and talk about reusable actions. That's an exciting piece.
Thank you. Yeah. So they GitHub recently introduced reusable workflows. They introduced them for a while, but they just say they were not used. They were usable, but not applicable in the enterprise world because the GitHub Actions repos had to be public repos. Annoying, right?
Just not ready yet.
Makes no sense. Yeah. So they fixed it. Now reusable workflows can be inside the don't have to be in the public repos anymore. There is also, that's not on the slide, is the new feature called composite actions, which is essentially if your workloads have a set of actions that are like a group of actions that you use over and over again, you can make them a composite action very easily and reuse it. And again, feed the parameters into it and whatnot. And all of that is YAML, right? So all of that is code and all of that is again,
stored in your repo with your code.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And by the way, your organizations and your accounts, you can configure actions and say, you know what, only actions from the following organizations. I'm trusting all actions inside my enterprise. I want to use the actions from, I'm trusting actions from this provider, that provider, or I'm trusting, or you could be as granular as I trust this action, this public action, but I only trust that specific hash of that action, right? So you can tie it to a specific commit. And like when people want to add more changes, you don't necessarily have to inherit it. You can, you don't have to. All right, and the reusable actions and workflows and composite actions allows you to, create templates and reuse templates across your enterprise. So you can create a number of, you can create an ecosystem of actions or components that you can make available to your enterprise and say, when you're trying to build or when you're trying to deploy to Kubernetes, use this action, right? That will authenticate, it will do everything for you, right? Kind of thing. When you're trying to, I don't know, deploy.
You want to run a scan.
You want to run a scan. Yeah, you want to build NPM, right? You're controlling. You can predefine those set of actions for users, how you want them to use it, and then make them available to your audience. So if they want to use it, they can.
And you can build policies right into them too, right, Max? So that you can turn off or allow them to override certain parts of the generic script, but not others that you want to make sure that they run.
There's some flexibility to that, absolutely,
Yeah.
right? There's
Awesome.
a lot of new features that are coming out in GitHub. The one that I'm looking forward to the most is organizational workflows. So this is again, this is builds on top of my guesses, right? This will take that composite action and reusable actions, or reusable actions to the next level, right? So you can manage it easy across the enterprise. Should be available soon. Really looking forward to it.
This
But
is it's exciting because I don't know about you, but we've both been Azure DevOps guys for a long time and done a lot with Azure pipelines, and GitHub Actions just really wasn't there yet. It didn't have all the features that I can do in Azure pipelines, but I'd say it does now. It's there.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it takes it to the next level, right?
absolutely.
Like an example, right? And the OpenID stuff, right? Where you can configure your pipelines, where you can create the service principal inside Azure or Amazon or GCP, right? That will allow you to use OpenID Connect. So basically, you define a service principal that's tied to a specific repo or to a specific branch in that repo or to a specific environment in that repo, right? And it can only be used to deploy using in that particular scope, right? So, and when you actually deploy it, and when you use that in GitHub, there's no passwords, right? You just say, here's my client ID, here's my tenant ID, here's my subscription ID, and that's it. So when you try to deploy it and then you grant the permissions to that service principal, obviously, but and that service principal can only be used in that specific scope, which is again very good, very different way of thinking, right?
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So go to the next slide. There's just tons of, we won't dwell on this and we're not going to read it to you, but it's like there is so much in the marketplace, in the GitHub marketplace for actions. All the different things that you can do is just, it's endless. I think this is like one of the largest marketplaces there is now for developers.
The one thing that's missing from, again, it's not necessarily a marketplace, it's an ecosystem, right? So there is actually a GitHub marketplace, but not the GitHub actions that you can use doesn't have to be in marketplace. It could be any public repo, right? Or any repo that you have access to, kind of thing. So the marketplace is just a small portion of what's actually out there, and there is a lot.
Yeah, loads.
All right, cutting edge dev tools. Let's try to pick things up a little bit. All right, code spaces.
Awesome.
If people haven't used code spaces, give it a shot. The best way to kind of experience the free version of code spaces is if you go to GitHub repo, hit the dot, period on your keyboard, and it will open up the web editor in your web browser, and it can be used on across. You can add it directly in the web browser, so you can add it using, again, iPad if you want to. The code spaces is again more feature rich implementation than that free dev editor, right? It allows you, so essentially what you can do is you can configure your custom images that say, here's how my dev environment looks, and you can link it, and you can so when developers, you can assign certain developers to certain teams. So when they try to use it, or when they need code space to say, I open this repo in my code space, it will go ahead and immediately launch it in the web browser. And not only you can use it to edit, but you can also use it to test. You will get a fully fledged terminal. You can use it to compile, run the commands. You can build it, you can test it. So when you build it locally, you can actually deploy it locally and make it expose it on the port that could be private or public, right? So you can, again, you can share those links just with your fellow colleagues. Again, extremely powerful, extremely useful tool. It allows you to one of the to me why I like it the most is when I start working the client, sometimes the onboarding takes a while. Sometimes it's hours, sometimes it's days, sometimes it's weeks, right? Depends on how things are working. But this just makes that onboarding like a snap, right? All I gotta do is just say, give me access to your code space templates, and I'm done, right? I can launch it. I can do what I can be productive and deliver
Change
value. Yeah,
technologies. You can have one for
exactly.
.NET coding, one for NPM, one for
Sure.
Node.js. You could,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's configuration files that you can
So
define. Pretty
from an
cool.
enterprise point of view, the speed at which you can onboard and offboard developers and consultants and
Mhm.
contractors and everybody is just,
Yeah.
phenomenal.
And again, you can define the sizes of the VM, so it can be as small as 2 gig VM, as big as 32, I think, right now. So
Yeah, amazing.
again, this is, and you pay the way the companies are paying for it is consumption based, right? So you pay for while the code space is up, and because it's a VM behind the scenes, um, and that's it. Well, and
Yep,
storage, obviously.
yep,
All right, but again, so if you haven't tried the code spaces, give it a shot. I think it's again very powerful.
yep. Once you flip to the next, there you go, Copilot.
Oh, Copilot is scary. um, it we actually had a we were working on something last week, a couple of weeks ago, and we needed to write. I forgot what that is. The REST API call to GitHub or something, and we were like, okay. Let's look up in documentation how it's done, and then as we start typing it in the Visual Studio Code, in the comments, say we basically said, this is what we need in the comments, right? And the Copilot basically said, oh, that's what you want, and gave us a function that does exactly what we needed to do. Um, awesome. Like saved us a lot of looking up, right? And a lot of time. And again, it's getting smarter the more you use it. So again, so it allows you to autofill some repetitive code that you can again update as you see fit, but just cuts down on that what's the word? Reinventing the wheel, right? Writing the same code
Yeah,
over and over again. Give it a shot. It's a
yeah,
public beta too, from what I know.
cool. Let's talk a bit about security.
A little bit. We're going to talk a lot about security.
All right.
All right. So security, in GitHub, security is first class citizen. It is there from the beginning till the end. All right. So the more code you write, the more technical debt you potentially collecting, the more exposure you have, and so on and so forth, right? So you want to, um, uh, the more applications you have, again, the more potential breaches you will have. So you want to get you want to minimize that, and the earlier you catch this vulnerability, the cheaper it is for you to actually address it, right? So some chart, hopefully you can see
And
it, but it says,
let me
sorry, Dave,
just
go
let me
ahead.
just I'm just going to throw in there, and most developers aren't security experts, nor are they that conscious of it. I mean, a lot of them are, have a good handle on it, but it's not it's pretty easy to put a vulnerability into your code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's easy to put it in, but and again, you want to make it as easy for developers to discover it for them as early as possible. You also want to make it as easy for developers to fix right away, right? So in a lot of places, there's a separate scans for it, right? That's going to go ahead and scan it. And again, they do excellent job, right? And they work. The problem with them, the way I see it, is you have to get developers go to a different tool to analyze that vulnerability, right? And to triage it in there, and then connect to a different set of people that's actually going to go ahead and do something about it, right? It's all a little bit, a lot of wasted cycles, right? And a lot of communication, a lot of waste in communication, I guess, right? Um, so the GitHub Advanced Security makes again, it will scan and we'll get to those slides, right? It just makes all of that process shift left approach a lot simpler, right? It allows you to find, again, your goal is to discover errors as early as possible. So in the development cycles, it's the cheapest option, right? So you want to make it as easy to address it at this stage as possible, because the further it is to the right, the more expensive it becomes.
Before you switch slides,
Uh-huh.
I just there's one thing I love on this slide that I just want to make sure people saw. There are 570 times more developers than there are security researchers. And this is just, I mean, the point is, there's people out there writing code, open source code. There's just tons of it, right? There's millions and millions of lines of code, and we're using them, right? I mean, we're pulling in logging tools and whatever, authentication tools and all kinds of things that are open source because somebody's already written it. It's fantastic. Why recreate the wheel? But is all of this getting scanned? Is it all good to go? There's just so
Yeah,
much of it.
you want to take advantage of the of that
Absolutely.
open source, but you don't want to make yourself vulnerable by that.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Dave. So so you want to, and the way it's working, it's the GitHub Advanced Security allows you to integrate security analysis directly into your pull request experience, right? Your your code review experience, so you can discover all of those vulnerabilities as a part of the code review. How are we doing on time, Dave? By the way,
we got 20 minutes.
I mean on slides. I mean that's what I meant.
Are we doing on slides? Oh, you're okay. You're okay. There's
All
about
right,
5 or
good.
6 to go.
So security. The GitHub has the built-in dependency scanning that you can take advantage of. Dependency scanning, the Dependabot even takes it to the next level. Again, you can configure it so that not only it's going to discover vulnerabilities, but it's also going to go ahead and offer you, create a PR on your behalf, create a PR for you to approve. So saying, you know what, just like you see on the demo, right on the slide, it says, oh, there's a new Nokogiri dependency, the new version of it. Would you like to approve it? It gives you all the information about it, and you review it, and you say, yes, I like it. Just click I approve, gets merged. Very cool. One less thing to do, right? To actually create a pull request and actually update the version that you need. It's pretty cool. And it's smart enough saying, you know what, if the 1.5 came out and then 1.86 came out, but you haven't accepted 1.85 yet, it will actually say, you know what, forget 1.85, take 1.86, it's better. Pretty cool.
Yeah, nice.
All right, code scanning. So there's a lot. Code scanning is part of the advanced security offering, which is again part of GitHub, but it's the it's an additional offering that you can use. CodeKL. It's the world's largest semantic code engine. So the way I like to think about it, it's community-driven and expert-led, right? So you can actually it's in GitHub. You can contribute to those CodeKL rules, and it's going to get reviewed by experts, and it's going to be enhanced, and so on and so forth. So again, very transparent and very powerful tool. It works great. It's amazingly fast. It has it's very efficient, right? And it's really good. So if you haven't given it a shot, take a look. And it allows you to the whole advanced security offering allows you to not only discover the vulnerabilities, but also triage them easily inside the GitHub. Makes that process a lot smoother. Secret scanning. Secret scanning is part of the advanced security as well, and it allows developers. It will help you prevent accidental leakage of authentication of the tokens, right? So if I don't know about you, but I've done it. So accidentally you commit the token into a feature branch, right? We've done it. So what do you do now? Okay, you can go to Git and you can rewrite the history and say, you know what, forget it, never happened. But you just don't want that to happen at all. So code scanning will help you. It will give you alerts. You can set up it has support for a number of the different token types. You can also define your own custom patterns, saying, you know what, my this app tokens look like this, so look for them too, right? Very powerful, very cool. Just again, one extra thing that just makes your code base, your apps a lot more secure.
Saves your butt.
Yeah. So, all right. public roadmap. So there's a lot of the GitHub evolves constantly, evolves at a very, very fast pace, right? There's a lot of new features coming out all the time. And if there's something that you need that it's not available yet, look up on the public roadmap. And chances are somebody's already came up with it and it's already on the roadmap. You can also bump it up if you want to, right? So again, look up the public roadmap. The one thing that I do want to highlight when I was, again, once I start reading this is GitHub is so flexible and again, so extensible that if there's something that's not available yet, chances are you can make it happen, right? So it's not going to be out of the box functionality, but you can build it yourself. You can build it to your exact specifications. And we haven't talked about the GitHub apps, right, during the actions, but the GitHub apps, the Probot apps, that again, that's part of the GitHub Actions extensibility that allows you to automate the behavior inside your GitHub, right? Based on certain event triggers or based on certain schedules or whatever, right? So you can write your custom utility GitHub apps that will do the things for you, right? Again, there's a lot of examples, right? For example, you can say, I want to make sure that all of my repos were configured this way, right? I want to make sure that the branch policies are always set on main branch. You don't want to limit permissions from users to actually configure it to, again, you don't want to limit the users too much. So what you can do is saying, you know what, you have permission to change it, but as soon as you change it, if you try to change it to something that wasn't approved, it's going to go ahead and reset it for you. So it's like a desired state configuration, right? You can, again, you can extend that to practically anything inside the GitHub. It's really, really cool. What's an event code? Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm watching.
I read it as an error. I'm like, event code, what is that? Okay, thank you. So there's a lot of new, really cool functionality. The GitHub Enterprise can be and should be can be implemented in the enterprise and definitely should be given your consideration, right? It is very powerful. It is very, very effective, and it incorporates all of those best practices and all the modern development practices that again, that common modern developers are using. So
yeah,
give a shot.
It's come a long way from the old GitHub. It's enterprise.
Open source,
yeah, it's enterprise ready. Yeah. If you weren't sure, check it out.
Yeah, again, it takes all the lessons it learned from the open source and tries to apply them, and again helps try to apply them to the enterprise world, which helps you to improve the enterprise world approach as well, right? So take a look at the GitHub Enterprise. Take a look at the code spaces. Take a look at the Copilot. Take a look at advanced security, because advanced security is great. It is again, it's a separate offering, but I bet you it can go toe to toe with almost every major code scanning tool out there, right? And again, and it's so natively integrated into GitHub that will make user experience so easier, which will make, again, your developers happier, which will make the discovering vulnerabilities faster, which again, just worth the price of admission on its own. Take a look.
All right. Yeah.
And if you have any questions about the GitHub Enterprise, anything we can help with, please reach out to Dave or myself. Now, I guess we can take questions if you have any.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. If you got any questions, ask away. If not, well, maybe some will come to you later and you can reach out to us.
That works.
Yeah. Well, nothing's popping in, so it's not a lot of point keeping them all hanging around, is there, Alexa?
We can, leave another 2-3 minutes for questions. In the meantime, I'm just going to give you a little info here. We have rescheduled the first episode of this series for May 12th. Stay tuned. Visit our meetup page to sign up for the event. And yeah, we will be back with episode 1 on May 12th for the next session. If you have a few more minutes, we always appreciate feedback. Please use this link to share your experience on our survey link. You can use the event code. I also shared the link in the chat. And lastly, join our community. You're probably already on our YouTube, but as I mentioned before, this session is being recorded and will be available on demand on our YouTube channel. I shared also the link for our meetup. We're on Meetup, we're on Twitter, and yeah, join the community.
Absolutely.
I don't see any questions pop up. It feels like everything was very clear for today.
I guess so.
But
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, so just say thank you. And again, if you come up with any questions later, please. There's a question from Jack.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
What's the GitHub Advanced Security pricing is like? Pricing and licensing usually subject to your level of your agreement with Microsoft or GitHub. So usually, again, to get the exact pricing, you have to reach out to your licensing, I guess, person, right? What I can tell you is that in my experience, the pricing is most of the time it's less than the competitors. It depends what you're trying to do, but and depends on your usage. But most of the time it's less than the competitors. Sometimes it's on par. Sometimes it's a little bit more, depending on consumption. But you also have to take into account how getting things scanned is one thing, finding vulnerabilities is another thing, and fixing them or making them easy to fix by the developers is like something else entirely, right? So if you found the vulnerabilities, that's okay, great. How do you fix them, right? How difficult it is. So that experience, that's like how easy it is to get things addressed. It's extremely easy in GitHub Advanced Security. It's very simple. It's very native, and it's very powerful process that you can take advantage of. So again, that is a big deal, right? So don't just look at the price. Look at the overall developer experience, right? Overall effectiveness or efficiency of that tool.
I put a link to the GitHub Docs page on it. It's not like there's a little calculator there. It says what Max said, but you can ask. Yeah. Well, it's worth it. I mean, if you're an enterprise, right? This is all about enterprise, and if you're an enterprise, you can't afford not to do that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And again, if you're using other third-party tools, they are like, none of them are cheap. Security is not cheap. But again, this tool is really, really good.
Especially when you get caught up by something.
Oh, yeah.
Ransomware is not cheap either.
Yeah, reputation is not cheap. So
yeah, reputation is
fantastic.
Not cheap.
Thank you, Jack. Hopefully that was helpful. Anybody else have any other questions? We're here for a few more minutes. Otherwise, you can reach us online, email, Twitter. Again, you'll find us. We're online.
Yep. We're easy to find.
Well, thank you again both for joining us today. This, as usual, was a great session, and we're looking forward to the next one.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks for taking care of us.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. And by the way, the last session is on the you showed it on the slide already. It's the Azure GitHub or Azure DevOps. What's the right option for our organization? Please join. It will be fun. We'll try to give you as much, make that decision as easy as possible for you.
There's conflicting opinions, so it's.
Yes, there's a lot of things to think about. Yes.
Even between Max and I, there's conflicting opinions, so it's good.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Fantastic. We'll
Bye,
see you
all.
on May 12th.
Bye,
Have a
everybody.
good
Have a
one.
good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.